Hey, DeRacers. So we've been working a lot on trying to understand wearables a bit. We've been building out some crude tools. We have some updates, but a lot to dive into to talk about today. So first, I want to start off by talking about what referring to as like the road to level 80. Now, there's approximately 1.6 million XP required to get all the way to level 80. And then depending on how aggressive you're racing, you're going to see different trends of pockets of how long you're going to be in it. So like, for example, if you're running on average 20 races a day, you would be able to see that you can climb almost all the way to level 6 just in time in one day. So just hammering and going. Now, if you were to go at that pace, you could see that as you scroll down and you hit like the 50s, you're going to be at that level for 3 days at a time. So your wearables are going to only be around for maybe a couple levels before you're able to move on. So if you have every single range, if you have all these pieces, they're not going to be a long worn item.
So that column D there, we're looking at how many days you're spending in that particular level.
Correct.
And then column F is pointing out how many days you're on that path to 80.
Yep. Now, if you're more aggressive, like, so when I was using just myself, not taking advantage of ARM, our automated race manager, if I go to 30, this is what the C word was able to crank out on average. So it would take me about 133 days at that pace. Now, since having ARM, I've been going at a full tilt and I'm averaging 100 races per day. And you can see if you can cruise at that rate, I could pull it off in 42. And what's important about this is you're only going to be at a level for about 1 day. So my main takeaway on this one is depending on how aggressive your racing strategy is, it might dictate how much you would like to, if you're going to go buy wearables to make sure you're equipping your horses, just know you might only use it for a couple days depending on your strategy.
All right.
Okay.
And then,
so
sorry, just looking at your math here on how you're calculating that. Can you go into it a little bit? I'm seeing the 100 races per day.
Sure.
It looks like you're also including missions in your estimates for how fast we can level up.
Yeah, so I did a couple different assessments trying to track like the average missions that appear, the average like daily, weekly, and monthly, what is needed to do it, how much XP you should probably get. And what I have found to be a fairly safe rule of thumb is if your horse is really bad or not as great, target maybe 350 XP per race. And if your horse is really good, I think you could push it as high as 450. So in my math, I average around, I think, 410 just to put it somewhere in that middle ground. And so that's what it kind of rolls out to be. As you can see with 100 races, it's projecting then 40,000. So 407 XP per race is what.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Doing some quick math there in column J in my head.
All right. So then the other thing that I wanted to point out about this is researching some of the advantages of going from uncommon to, common to uncommon to rare, epic, and legendary. So you and I did a ton of scraping. We'll share off some stuff on this too, but just taking a look at ear nets, because I was able to find the most on those. Taking the what we're calling the net boost, the plus speed, plus stamina, plus focus, combined is the net boost. The ear nets at level 80, we're seeing a 162. Uncommon and rare are both 166. Epic 168. Can't find a legendary yet, but I'm going to guess it is 170. Then the other thing that we've noticed is when you go from ear nets to protection boost to horseshoes, almost all of them have the exact same net boost effect. And then taking a look and cross-referencing it to some of the other items, I put this as my suspected averages that I suspect if you were to take all level 80 common pieces, they would average 162. And I suspect all uncommon would average at 164, 66, 68, and 70.
And the reason why he's saying that he suspects that they'll average that is there's certain materials at each level. I think in the common level, there's like 5 different materials, 6 different materials that you can get for your wearable. You've probably noticed this. There's a slight difference on each one. One might be more focused on speed, and another may be more focused on stamina and focus. And when you take a total, the net boost that we're referring to here, it might be 160, it might be 162, it might be 161. It just depends on that material.
That's absolutely correct. And then what I've done down here as well is just to compare. So let's say that you took all 9 items at level 80, and we're all common, you should see a general net boost effect of around 1,458 points. If you did the exact same thing with legendary, I suspect it's going to be about 1,530, giving you a difference of only 72 net boost effect between a fully decked out common and a fully decked out legendary.
And
So,
that's,
yeah.
I mean, that's 72, but that's across 3 different categories: speed, stamina, and focus. So like you might only be looking at a plus 40 speed or a plus 20 focus or something like that of that 72 points. So it's not like you're getting an additional 72 on your speed boost alone going from common to legendary.
Yep. Now, I'm not saying that legendary is useless by any means. I just want to point out that it seems to be far more important to make sure that you have every single level and every single rank of your product. So I personally would recommend targeting commons. Just stockpile. Make sure that you have enough to guide you all the way up the course of 80. I don't think it's worth it at this stage to save up all that sugar and use it for rarer items, because you might get yourself a level 10 behind you, but it doesn't have enough boost to get you where you need to be. I would attack the commons, get those things flushed out.
Oh yeah.
And then maybe after that you could skip and start pursuing those legendary. But I think there's a more efficient way.
Absolutely. The legendaries, I think, are 10 times as much sugar to open up a chest and key. And you're seeing here that, what are we talking, 8 points difference on the ear nets, like 162 to 170. Like, I don't know that wasting your sugar, let's call it that, on your path to 80 is really worth it. Now, like you said, once you're at 80, yeah, go ahead. See if you can roll the dice and get a legendary and gain those extra few points. But on your pathway there, it's not really worth it.
Correct. Now, you and I, this is just a view of what we've been building internally in this research. So you'll see this is just an ongoing list from common all the way up to legendary. Now, if you take a look at the net gain, there have been some anomalies we've found. For example, the Desert 2 stirrups, that is an abnormally high net boost. I was fortunate enough to get lucky and found this one. So basically, once a horse hits level 2, you can see that like you got a net gain of 6, 5, 4, 6, and then 84, 8, 6, 7, 6. I suspect that this was an error in the code, or there was just a Easter egg that stumbled on. This one here as well, the bronze horseshoes level 2, this one has a net boost of 26. These 2 items are abnormally good for that level. And then beyond that, you'll almost notice that it's a perfect linear increase. So you'll see it go from 10, 15, 17, 18, 20, 22, and it slowly creeps its way up. So that led us to doing some just basic math. And what we're doing is basically calculating the slope. And what we've found is that if you take the net gain from level to level to level, and this is across the board from common to legendary, when you go from level 1 to level 2, from level 2 to level 3, you should see a net boost increase on average of 2 points. So going back to it again, it is so much more important that you have every single level in increments, because each one of those is going to come with at least, or basically, a 2 net boost.
Yeah, and I think where this plays, and we'll do a little more of a deep dive here shortly into looking at speed versus stamina and focus. But when we're looking at these type of wearables, as you move up your levels, there's an importance to having donkeys that can help feed your sugar and sugar harvesting, right? Having these horses that you wouldn't otherwise run be able to earn you a few extra so that you can have a chance to pick up more and more wearables as you go. You know, you don't want to slough off those 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, just because you aren't there yet. You know, they are going to be incredibly valuable once you get there. I think what we're trying to point out here is that the difference between a level 70 common and a level 70 rare isn't really something that you need to pursue, but getting as many of those commons as you can is incredibly important.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think I may have made this error, is if you open something that's 75 or higher, I in the beginning was burning some items so I can try to get my lower level, but there was a bunch of chaos in the beginning where it was the first to level up gets to have a lot of success. So I was burning the stuff that was really high level because I was trying to maximize the stuff at the lower level to allow me to stay in the front of the pack. Now that the pack is evolved, I would suggest to anybody that opens up a level 80 item, keep it. Like, even if it's common, if you have 2 of them, keep them both. Like, those are going to become valuable in the game, because once you get to level 80, that is technically the best that you can get. And the common's not that bad compared to a level 80 legendary. So keep your eyes open on that. Even if you have a level 25 horse with a level 80 something, keep it.
Yeah, I think anything over 75 is going to be incredibly valuable, because there's going to be a lot of those level 80 horses that are either going to have to buy the item on the open market, or they're going to have to just keep waiting and see if they can pull one out of a crate. And the having them ahead of time means that just because you're a level 70, let's say a level 80 horse, but you're wearing a level 75 set of wearables, you're still going to be amazing. Like that is amazing. So if you can have a full set of 75, hang on to those, even if you do eventually get up to level 80.
So then the next thing that I think would be good to talk about is like that general strategy of when you have a stable, and especially as we're seeing the pack thin out. Right now, the highest ranking horse, I believe, is a 63. So the Emperor right now is at a 63. So if you are in this top page, which I'm happy to be in there at 52, there's a lot of profit to be in this top zone. So these horses can run abnormally fast. Getting your horse up to this pack is a huge advantage. So when you're taking a strategy, like for me with the C-word, this is looking at our arm, literally have her turn on to every single track with wearables or not. I just want her to run everything. And with this strategy, looking at her, I could pull off, as you can see, 100 races per day. Now, this is from a couple days ago, and when she was not all the way up there. When she was running these, she was probably ranked around 38th, I think. And as you can see, didn't make money that day. It was a little bit of a loss. When I flip it over to Skondert had profit. But the difference between Skondert and her, if I open up Skondert's settings, you'll notice that Skondert is also doing every single track. He's not good at dirt, so I have him doing 1-1, but then I have 1-2 for all these others. He's also with either. So it's a little bit of a risk, because I've been noticing that the highest ranked horses, they dominate the 3s. So sometimes they'll drop down into the 2s, but for the most part, they're going into the most open races, and it's usually the most expensive wearable races. So the C-word's constantly going into those, whereas Skondert's sneaking into the 1s and the 2s, and he's able to maintain a profitability. However, within that version, you could see that he's not getting nearly as many races. It went from 100 down to 46. Jumping back to this thing, as you could see, if I were going at 46, I went from 42 days to be able to get to the final to 89. So deciding how aggressively you want to get your strongest horse to the top, just know that there's going to be there's higher competition. If you want to go full tilt like the C-word, you're going to be going up against a lot of 3s and really strong horses, whereas Skondert, very aggressive as well, but not nearly as aggressive, safer approach. He was helping offset the losses I was seeing in my full tilt aggression. But now that I'm in the top 20 rankings, profitability is flipped. C-word's making me a lot of money, and that's helping me pay for the more aggressive evolution of the rest of my stable.
Yeah, we called this section of the video "Raising a Champ," and I want to kind of talk about that from the perspective of not having been doing it for the last, 5 weeks into to wearables. We've got Emperor at a level 63. The vast majority of horses are sub 50. And I've got donkeys that are in the 20s now doing just random races. So there's still a tight pocket in the middle, but let's talk about what it means to start with a new horse, right? Like, be able to raise it from nothing and work your way up. Like, if we're talking about raising a champ, how do you decide if you're going to be running it 100 races a day or 40 races a day? Like, I understand the how much risk you're willing to take in terms of dirt loss. That makes sense. Like, if I don't care, I'm going to run anything and everything. But talk to me a little bit about your strategy if you were starting with a new horse, as you get up past a couple hundred races, 500 races, 1,000 races. Like, do I keep pursuing it all the way to 80 if it's not a great horse? Like, what are my options here?
Yeah. So here's a new start, and what I would do, this is what she is doing. I have no equipment, absolutely no equipment, but I have 1-to-1. So now I have the advantage because I have arm. So I could set these all to the ones, and then every single race that she ever does, at worst, I'm only betting the one. But what's nice about this is I could set her and forget about it, and she's averaging probably about 20 to 30 races per day, but they're very safe. And what's nice about this is in a couple weeks, I think she's already climbed up to a level 17. So very low expense for me. And I think she actually is profiting very little bit, but the one Dirk naked races seem to be the safest place. So whenever time I have a new foal, I'm definitely going to go across this strategy, get her going, find out where she's stronger or he's stronger. And then I might, depending on what adaptations change in the field, like are 1 and 2 Dirk equipments going to still be safe? Or are they going to add 4 and 5 or more higher value Dirk races in the future with new hippodromes coming out? Like right now, we just have this really tight cluster where these insane champions are racing against very low level horses. And it's a slaughter. If you're going up against the wrong horse, you can see easily a 5-second gap between third place and fourth.
Yeah, so we're right in the middle of, well, just wrapping up Discovery for the Dirk Army's Unraced Gen 1 tournament. And I actually submitted 3 horses for that tournament. So they all started running just after Wearables came out. Now, one of the cool things, I think, is when you are starting out a brand new horse and you decide to run those one Dirk races, right? If we're focusing on running anything everywhere without equipment, you can very quickly see if your horse is having success. And that's not with looking at any of our public tools, not looking at any of the websites. You can literally just tell by how fast it's leveling up, because you are getting more first place, second place, third place wins or podiums. And that's actually increasing or boosting your XP. And so I was able to determine after a couple hundred races, hey, I've got a really good horse on my hands here without even using all my other tools. And so I could start to look at that and say, okay, maybe this horse needs to be focused on a little more. And I spent some time digging into where it should run maybe 2 Dirk as well and see if I could focus a little more there. That allowed me to start profiting off of that horse, not just running in the chaos of the one Dirk races. Like you said, they are, I guess safer is a word for it, but it's also just chaos. You've got anything and everything being thrown into the one Dirk races. I mean, it can be amazing horses that have no idea they're amazing, or it could be donkeys that just suddenly decide that today is their day.
Yeah.
And it's been unreal to watch. So it's actually kind of scary to be running Discovery in the one Dirk, in my opinion. I like being able to get out of that initial phase once you pass 200 to 300 races and being able to say, okay, yeah, I found a synthetic horse, or
Agreed.
I found a dirt horse, and be able to focus on those.
So that reminds me, you should probably point out that for everybody that's using our tool, it is now DeRacers Analytics 9. Now, since we've had some updates, OXG from SMR has been working on getting us cleaner APIs for this, because we got to now separate this data. So there's going to be an evolution of this tool. But the one thing that is different now is with the equipment averages. So the indisputable score, and then down here, the population furlong averages, you'll notice that those will change. So if I have right now it's set to yes, that means that it's taking the averages down below here are horses that wear equipment. If I switch this to no, it's going to take the averages of horses that are running naked. So when it's no, you should have a much higher indisputable score. You should see a much higher population average. And testament to what you were saying, when you're running your horse initially, you should be running it naked. And then when you're looking at this, you would set it to no to make sure that your averages are competing against other horses that are not running equipment. And then if you start to discover you got these green indicators that are lining up, you have a horse that is showing up that's doing well. So then if you think you can then possibly break in and compete at the wearable level, I would recommend just simply toggling this, and you could see how different you are. Are you trailing? So if I'm down here, if the population average is a 12.38, I'm still beating them technically. So it is showing that, hey, if you put some wearables on this horse, it can still compete. So rather than setting yourself up for just a slaughter, this might be an indicator that will assist you in determining, are you ready to put on wearables and compete at the next level? Or is this horse better to be just used conservatively, gaining missions and slowly chipping away at that XP journey?
I think you pointed out something really clean here with the latest edition, the version 9. When we look at say Dirt 7s there, you see that 1223 average, right? And if you scroll up and switch it and toggle it on the equipment tab there from yes to no, you'll see that it goes back up to 1235. Now you've only run a single race here, and that makes sense. We're looking at a single date, but imagine your horse had 20 plus races here on Dirt 7s. You'd be able to assess how close you are on average without equipment before you even decide to go into an equipment race. So if you've got right here, you're a net positive of 20 100ths on your average furlong, right? You're running a 12.15 versus the 12.35 average. But when you switch to that over to the equipment averages being turned on, I think it was 12.23 or something like that, right?
Yeah, dropped by 1,200.
So now we only got an 8 100ths benefit. And assuming obviously that we could extrapolate this out over dozens of races, you could look at that and say, well, that's actually still pretty good. Like you're running really well there. So imagine putting Wearables on this horse. It's going to do even better.
Yep.
So if you can keep up with the best horses and have your equipment ready and boost it, you should still see a benefit there. And that's where this tool can come in handy.
Now, this tool has a couple little bugs in there because we have added in this date range. So like, for example, you'll notice that some of the podium rates are higher. It's not trimming one of the dates on the higher end. So you might see some errors. We know that those exist. Just been building a lot recently, trying to get everything caught up. But we thought that this was a must-needed tool. So that way you guys can get a sense of, are you ready to take the plunge? Now, the other thing on this one, because like when you're talking about the wearables and the values of it, I think it's important to show off this kind of concept as well. So this is not a public tool. This is just used in our research, just trying to get a sense of it, but it might eventually turn into one. But as you were saying earlier, we were talking about how different materials can have different themes. Some seem to be more speed focused, some stamina, reaction. And what's nice about this is when we bounce around, you'll see that if we're setting our horse from a 1 to a 25 for wearables, you'll notice like on this example, the net gain is 327 if I was focusing on a stamina approach. If I go to speed, that 327 increases to 399 as a net boost. Or if you want to go for just the maximum net gain, you can see it go as high as 495. And what we were trying to do is to basically log all the equipment that we have between our two stables. And as our horses progressed, we were able to figure out, like, based on the strategy that we're trying to do, we could swap materials back and forth and be the best competition. Now, we still don't fully know what these values do for us. The only thing that we have seen is the focus almost seems to be a 1-to-1 millisecond reduction to the reaction. Now, you've been doing a lot on that one. Do you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so talking about your boost strategy here, what I want to point out, and I'll end it with what you just served up for me there. When we're looking at a net gain strategy, right? If you're looking at a balanced approach for your horse at a level 25, this is basically a level 25 is where I would say you wouldn't really want to start running equipment races before this. Like being able to get to a level 25 right now is almost mandatory before I'd recommend going in against anyone else. So with a tool like this, being able to understand what you have in your inventory and seeing whether or not it will gain you stuff on a speed, stamina, or focus element or combination as the net gain would, you can see here that on the column B there, we've got level 25 items, but then there's an ear net that's a level 15. Like if we're looking at the best balance of elements to put together, that ear net is crazy low, or it seems like it is in terms of leveling. Now that may just be our lack of inventory, and probably is, but the reality is you won't have a piece for everything. Yep. So when we look at focus, if you don't mind switching over to that really quick on the strategy there, if your horse, now keep in mind, we know that horses come with a range of reaction times in milliseconds when they jump out of the gate. Previous to wearables, that could be 150 to 400, or 150 to 500, 600, 700, 800. What we've determined is that at this point, your total focus boost, so in this case, a level 25 with 104 focus, you'd be able to shave 104 milliseconds off of the top and bottom of your range. So if you were already a fast horse and 150 was the fastest you could go, you can now run sub 50. There, we already know that there's horses that can run a 0. Like I think you had it in one of your, was it dirt? Yeah.
Yeah,
A
right
minimum
here,
of 0.
0, 11, and another 0. So on that day, the C Word ran at least 2 different races with a 0 millisecond reaction.
And that's incredible. When we think about horses that are previously, let's say, 150 to 600 on their reaction, there's a lot of people in the community that might have said, I don't need that horse anymore. Like that's not a great horse. But now you add 100 focus to that horse at a level 25, you suddenly bring that horse down 100 points on that top end. That 500 becomes a 400. But the more important thing is that lower end, the 150, is now a 50. And so your averages are shrinking as a whole. But the fact that you can actually run basically a instantaneous jump out the gate is really fascinating to see. And we're going to be doing a lot more with studying boost and different strategies for that. In fact, why don't you go ahead and mention what we're about to get started with?
Yeah, definitely. Before I do that, I want to just throw out like a horse like Katana. Katana is insanely fast. It has a terrible reaction, but it still can dominate 6 and 7 dirts because it is so fast. It can accelerate and catch up for its errors out the gate. So by putting focus on a horse like that, I'm curious how many hidden champions we have that just have such poor reaction, but like they might only have 2 or 3 tracks that they can hit because they're so far down the run. If you put a lot of focus on them and shift them earlier, this is where I start to get excited about knowing like how do you adjust the recipe of what your horse is good at and then getting it dialed in. But I think it's going to be easiest once you hit level 80.
Yeah.
Now, what we're trying to do is between the two of us, I think we have 5 virgin horses that have never ran with equipment at all. So none of their data is tainted. And what our goal is to do is as we get those horses up a little bit higher, I think we're targeting around level 30. We're going to say, we're going to try to pick out our attributes that have the most speed with the least amount of stamina and focus. So that way we could bulk up the speed element, and then we're going to run the same tracks probably for another 30 days or so. And then we'll be able to have a clean data set of historical. Now we'll have a clean data set of knowing what a fixed rate. Now we're not going to be changing out the wearables. We're not going to increment them up. We're going to have to lock them. And then we're going to be able to start to see the measurements of it. Similar to what we just did with focus, we'll be able to see how much we're seeing it. Is it in the beginning? Is it in the middle? Is it the end? Hopefully we could find something about what does stamina do. Those are
I think what I want to be able to do is we'll probably take of those 5 horses, at least one of them who is only going to be doing focus-based changes. And we'll probably pick one of the ones that has one of those higher ranges initially so that we could take a look at it and say, okay, what was it doing before? And does it have any effect on the speed times and the stamina that we see play out as it races purely with a change to focus? And that's it. That'll be at least one of the horses. And then probably 2 other pairs will do something where one of them is speed focused and the other is stamina focused. And like you said, not changing any of their wearables, right? We're going to just pick out the things that have a majority of speed, leave it on there for that whole month, and see what the differences are. And we should see significant changes in the charting. And that should tell us where that particular set of wearables has an effect in the race.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And then the other thing I would want to say is like maybe we can end on a couple tips if we have anything on that. I would say if you're trying to get your horses leveled up and you're behind the pack by quite a bit, like again, going back to this, the top horses, they're at level 63 right now. So I mean, at what level do you think is safe to wear with wearables at this moment, knowing that the tops are at 63?
I think it depends on what your horse could do previously and whether or not your strategy is to hit anything and everything. Okay. If you've got very specific tracks and you dominate on those and you only want to run against those, I think you can run probably when you're about 60% of the way to the top horse.
Okay.
I think you can run before that. You're just going to take a little bit of a hit because you are going to go up against some of these really great horses. But if you're, let's say it's a level 60, if you were a level 35 to 40 right now, you could probably compete on certain tracks, but not across the board like some of these top horses can.
Yeah, I was going to probably say my rule of thumb is 20 levels. So if you're trailing within 20 levels, you could start to challenge and go up higher, but that you're still not going to do very well, but you're going to get a lot more XP because you're going to be hitting more opportunities to race. If you're below that, I would recommend 1s and 2s at a max, but I think it's very important. I think this is a period of time that you need to pay attention to some of these top leaderboards and avoid them. Like if your horse is not up here, I think these are the ones to watch out for. And then the other thing I would say is take advantage of chaos each time it comes out. So when jockeys show up, when new hippodromes show up, all of these things is going to pull a lot more horses into the mix. Hey, just got another thing. Nice job. So it's going to add a lot more to the mix, and then it's going to dilute the leaderboard. So be ready for that. If you have okay horses and you're looking for your time to strike, I think chaos is a good time. If things are quiet and calm, be cautious where you're going. Focus very closely on your naked races. And if you start going in that equipment, you need to be keeping your eyes out for these horses.
Yeah. Last thing I'd say is go get another updated copy of that analytics page. We're on version 9 now. Make a copy for yourself, especially if you're you've gotten yourself up over level 30, 40 at this point. You're going to want to start seeing what it's going to take to compete with those horses on the equipped races. But yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff that's coming out soon, and the community's seeing that play out already. And like you said, it's going to start spreading those good horses out, and there's going to be pockets of opportunity.